When my father died, I thought the hardest part would be learning to live without him. I never imagined the true heartbreak would come from the man I had vowed to spend the rest of my life with. My name is Emma Caldwell. I'm 36 years old, and until recently, I thought I was living a pretty fortunate life. I was married to Tom, charming, kind on the surface, and a man who at first made me believe in forever. We met 8 years ago at a conference in Chicago. I was in event marketing, and he was one of the speakers. Confident, charismatic, warm, or so I thought. I remember telling my dad about Tom the week after we met. He seemed solid, Dad had said over breakfast. But Emma, remember? Some people shine under stage lights and dim in real life. I brushed it off at the time. My father had always been protective, especially since it was just the two of us after Mom passed away when I was 20. He was everything to me. My anchor, my advisor, and the man behind Caldwell and West, the company he built from scratch and grew into a $35 million enterprise. Tom and I married 2 years after we met. It was a simple wedding, just close friends and family. My dad walked me down the aisle with teary eyes and a proud smile. Tom's mom, Diane, sat in the front row dressed in a designer gown and a permanent frown. From day one, she made it clear I wasn't exactly what she'd hoped for. "She's nice," I overheard her whisper to Tom at our rehearsal dinner. "But she doesn't look like CEO material." Still, I tried. I sent flowers on Mother's Day, invited her to family dinners, but Diane never warmed up to me. And Tom, well, he always shrugged off her comments like they were just harmless habits. Fast forward 6 years. My dad's health had been declining slowly, but the cancer moved faster than we expected. He died just 4 months after the diagnosis, quietly, in his sleep. I was devastated. Not just because I had lost my only parent, but because I hadn't even had time to prepare. The funeral was tasteful, elegant, everything he would have wanted. Tom helped a bit, though he seemed more distracted than grieving. Diane showed up late, wearing sunglasses that never came off and leaving before the end of the service. The day after the funeral, I received a call from my father's attorney. He wanted to meet about the estate. I didn't think much of it. I knew Dad had been successful, but I never asked for details. I assumed there would be a few properties, some investments, maybe enough to retire early someday. Instead, I learned my father had left everything, to me. The company, the properties, the accounts. After taxes, fees, and debts, it was valued at just over $35 million. I remember staring at the attorney, my hands trembling. It didn't feel real. That night, I sat on the couch with the legal documents spread across our coffee table. I didn't want to celebrate. I wanted to cry. The inheritance wasn't a prize. It was a reminder that he was gone. Tom came home from work, glanced at the papers, and gave a low whistle. "So it's true," he said, sitting beside me. "It's really all yours." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I didn't expect that much." He grinned, but there was something off. His tone shifted. "Well, we should probably talk about what to do with it. I mean, obviously we'll invest. Maybe look at buying that place in Aspen you liked. And of course, we'll have to figure out how much to give Mom." I blinked. "What?" Tom looked at me like I was slow. "My mom. Diane. She's family. We give her half, right?" "Half." I thought he was joking. Then I saw his face. Calm, dead serious. My chest tightened. "Tom, this is an inheritance from my dad. Why would we give half to your mother?" He smiled gently as if I were a child who didn't understand basic math. "Because she's family, Emma. And because she's been through a lot. She sacrificed for me, raised me alone. It's only right." I laughed. I actually burst out laughing. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He and his mother weren't family to my father. They were vultures. And I was just starting to realize it. And that was the first crack. Tom's request to give half of my inheritance to his mother lingered in the room like a foul odor. I stared at him, heart pounding, wondering if I'd heard him wrong. But his face said it all. He was serious. Tom, I said carefully, my dad left me this money. Not us, me. It's not a lottery win, it's his legacy, his life's work. Why on earth would we give half of it to your mother? His expression tightened, and he leaned back with an incredulous scoff. Emma, don't be selfish. You know she's family. She's my family. I blinked. Exactly. Your family, not mine. She wasn't even close to my dad. She left the funeral early. She hasn't called me once to say she's sorry for my loss. Tom's voice sharpened. That's just how she is. She's not good with emotions, but she cares. You think you're the only one who lost someone? What about my loss? Watching my wife turn into a greedy heiress overnight? Greedy? That word hit me like a slap. My mouth opened, then closed again. I suddenly felt cold. My father had only been in the ground for a few days, and the man I married, the man who once brought me soup when I was sick, who held my hand during job interviews, was now throwing around words like greedy and share. Something had shifted, or maybe something had finally revealed itself. I stood up. I need some air. As I walked out, I heard him mutter, "Unbelievable." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, his tone, his entitlement. And it wasn't just about the money. It was about how little he valued my father, and how quickly he felt entitled to something he never helped build. My dad used to say, "Grief doesn't change people. It reveals them." God, he was right. The next morning, Tom acted like nothing had happened. He brewed coffee, kissed my cheek, and chatted about the weather. I said nothing. Later that day, I received a call from Tom's mother, Diane. "Emma, sweetheart," she crooned, her voice sickly sweet. "Tom told me the wonderful news. I'm so proud of you. Your father was a smart man." There was a pause. I waited, already knowing what was coming. "I know this might be a little awkward, but since you're coming into all that money, I was thinking maybe we could sit down and talk numbers. I have some ideas. You know, investments, real estate, maybe a new place for myself. Something small and tasteful." I pressed the phone harder against my ear, trying not to explode. "You want to talk numbers? Diane, I lost my father less than a week ago." She clicked her tongue. "Yes, and he would want you to take care of family. That's what good daughters and good wives do." Something snapped inside me. "Diane, with all due respect, you are not my family. You're not entitled to a cent of this money. And the fact that you're even bringing this up now says a lot about your character." There was a silence on the other end. Then a cold, sharp voice replied, "You always thought you were too good for us. Well, let's see how long you last when you're all alone, sweetheart." She hung up. I stared at my phone, stunned. My hands were shaking. By dinner, Tom had somehow heard about the call. He wasn't even subtle anymore. "You had no right to speak to my mother that way," he said. "She had no right to ask for money." He raised his voice. "She's my only family, and I won't let you treat her like garbage just because you got a windfall." I looked him dead in the eye. "This isn't a windfall, Tom. It's a grave. My father died. And instead of mourning with me, you and your mother are treating it like a payday." He didn't respond. His silence was louder than any argument. Over the next few days, things got worse. Diane started showing up at the house unannounced. Once with a binder of properties she thought we should buy together. Another time with an interior designer in tow. Tom never stopped her. In fact, he encouraged her. "She's just excited," he'd say. "Don't be so dramatic." Dramatic? I was watching my marriage dissolve in slow motion, and he called me dramatic. I began locking the office where I kept the legal papers. I changed my passwords, moved a portion of the funds into a separate account, and met with the lawyer again, privately this time. "I'm not sure yet," I told him, "but I need to know my rights." He nodded slowly. "You're not the first to come in here after an inheritance. but most people don't come with security cameras. I blinked. Cameras? He leaned forward. Install them. Now, especially if you live with someone who thinks they deserve half of everything. The suggestion made my skin crawl, but I followed his advice. 2 days later, I caught Diane snooping through my desk drawers. She wasn't looking for stationery, and that was the moment I stopped grieving and started planning. Diane didn't even flinch when I caught her going through my desk drawers. "Oh, Emma," she said breezily, like she'd simply been looking for a pen. "I was just searching for a notepad. Tom said you keep extras in here." Her hand rested casually near the locked file drawer, the one that held the inheritance documents. I stood silently in the doorway, trying to keep my breath steady. My heart was racing, not from fear, but fury. "Next time you need something," I said, "ask." She smiled, tight and smug. "Of course, dear." As soon as she left the room, I locked the drawer again and checked the camera footage. Clear as day. Her digging through folders, opening envelopes, checking labels. She was looking for something, and I had a sinking feeling I knew what. That night, I confronted Tom. "Your mother was in my office today. She was trying to find the inheritance paperwork." Tom didn't even blink. "She was curious. It's a lot of money, Emma. People get curious." She had no right. He sighed and rubbed his temples like I was exhausting him. "You're being paranoid. It's not like she stole anything." "She doesn't need to steal it," I said sharply. "She's trying to manipulate us into giving it to her." Tom stood up. "She's not manipulating anyone. She's trying to help. And frankly, you should be grateful someone is thinking clearly about how to use this money. You're acting like a hoarder." I froze. A hoarder? Tom took a step back, perhaps realizing how far he'd just gone. "I didn't mean it like that," he said quickly. "I just meant you're keeping it all to yourself. That's not what families do." Something inside me hardened. "This isn't about family," I said. "It's about greed and control. And the fact that ever since my dad died, you've stopped seeing me as your wife and started seeing me as a wallet." Tom scoffed and stormed out of the room. I didn't follow him. I couldn't. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my heart pounding, and I cried. Not for my father this time, but for myself. Because I knew then. My marriage was over. I just hadn't signed the paperwork yet. Over the next week, I began preparing quietly. I met with a financial advisor. I contacted a second lawyer, someone who specialized in asset protection and high net worth divorces. I started slowly moving funds into my personal account, making sure every transaction was legally sound and documented. But I didn't stop there. Following the lawyer's advice, I updated the security system, installed cameras at every entrance, hired a private investigator to discreetly check into Diane's financial history. What he found didn't surprise me. Credit card debt, failed business ventures, and a recent inquiry into opening a luxury skincare line with no capital. No wonder she had her claws out. Meanwhile, Tom became more distant, then suddenly affectionate. One night, he brought home flowers. Another night, he cooked dinner. "I've been thinking," he said as we sat at the table. "Maybe we got off on the wrong foot with everything. It's been a hard time. Losing your dad, dealing with the inheritance, planning our future." I watched him closely. He hadn't cooked in over a year. I didn't touch the wine he poured. "So what are you saying?" I asked carefully. He smiled. "Let's just start fresh. Forget the money talk. Let's go on a trip. You and me. Somewhere nice." I stared at him, realizing what was happening. This wasn't reconciliation. It was strategy. He thought if he got me relaxed and happy, I'd lower my guard. He could charm his way back into control, but it was too late for that. "I think I'll pass on the trip," I said with a polite smile. "I've got too much going on at work." He didn't argue, but the glint in his eye told me he wasn't giving up. The next morning, I noticed something strange. My laptop had been moved. Not by much, just an inch or two. The lid was slightly cracked open. I always shut it. I checked the login activity. Sure enough, someone had tried and failed to enter my password twice, and the camera light had flickered on in the middle of the night. Tom denied it, of course. Must have been a glitch. He shrugged. I didn't even respond. I simply changed my passwords again and took my lawyer's next piece of advice. Gather evidence. All of it. Document everything. So I did. Every conversation, every suspicious move, every attempt to guilt me into giving away my inheritance, I recorded it all. Because when the time came, I wouldn't just be walking away. I'd be walking away with proof. And if Tom thought he could play me like a fool, he was going to learn exactly who he married. 3 days after Tom tried and failed to hack into my laptop, he stopped pretending altogether. The mask was off. He no longer brought flowers or made phony apologies. He didn't try to charm me or guilt me with sweet words. He just hovered, watching, waiting, as if he knew something was slipping through his fingers and he didn't know how to stop it. Diane, however, was more aggressive than ever. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find her sitting at the table, barefoot, robe slightly open, drinking my coffee like she owned the place. She'd let herself in using the emergency key Tom swore he'd given to the dog walker. "Emma," she smiled with faux sweetness. "We need to talk." I stared at her. "You need to leave. Now." She didn't budge. "I just want to make sure you're not doing anything impulsive. You're under a lot of stress. I'd hate for you to make a financial mistake just because you're grieving." I laughed bitterly. "You mean a mistake like not handing over millions of dollars to a woman who hasn't worked in a decade and calls me greedy behind my back?" Diane's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Emma. It's not wise to make enemies in your own home." I leaned in just slightly, voice low and calm. "This house isn't yours, and neither is the money. Now get out before I call the police." She stood up slowly, glaring. "You think you're so smart, but women like you crack, sooner or later." I held her gaze until she left. After the door slammed, I locked it. Then I took a deep breath and called my lawyer. "It's time," I told him. "I want to move forward." We began preparing the divorce filing. My lawyer had advised me to be strategic, quiet, clean. I'd already moved half the inheritance into a trust, untouchable in divorce proceedings thanks to my father's foresight and the way he structured the assets. The other half was in my personal account, still technically joint property, unless I acted quickly. That night, I told Tom I wanted to meet at a cafe the next morning. Neutral ground. Public, controlled. He looked suspicious but agreed. I arrived early, sat at a corner table with a full view of the door. I had the divorce papers in my bag, along with a flash drive containing evidence, audio recordings, screenshots, even the video of Diane rifling through my office. Tom walked in 5 minutes late, wearing a forced smile. "Hey, Em," he said casually. "What's this about?" I didn't waste time. I pulled out the envelope and slid it across the table. "What's this?" he asked. "Divorce papers." His face twitched. He didn't touch the envelope. "Is this a joke? Number, this is me saying I'm done." He laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "You're serious? Over money?" "No," I said. "Over disrespect. Over betrayal. Over you treating my father's death like your golden ticket." He dropped the smile. "I supported you, Emma. For years, I was there when your mom died. I stood by you. And now that you're rich, you just want to throw me away?" "No," I said. "You threw yourself away. The moment you decided your mother deserved more than your wife." He slammed his hand on the table. A few people turned to look. "You think you're smart? You think you can just walk away with everything?" "We're married. I get half of it in the divorce. That's the law." I smiled, cold and measured. "Actually, no. The inheritance is legally separate property. My lawyer confirmed it. My father left it to me. and you have no claim to it. Not a cent. He went pale. You're bluffing. I pulled out the flash drive and placed it on the table. Every conversation, every lie, every attempt to manipulate me, documented. If you push me, I'll make sure the judge sees all of it. He stared at the flash drive like it was poison. I'm offering you a fair settlement, I said. You take what we legally built together. Nothing more. Or you can fight me in court and walk away with less. Tom leaned back, eyes hollow. You really think you're going to win? I already have. He didn't speak again. He just stood up, took the envelope, and left. That night, I changed all the locks. Again. I sent Diane a cease and desist letter through my attorney, and I blocked them both from every account, every contact, every connection. There was no going back now. But for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully, because the line had been drawn. And next was retribution. The morning after I handed Tom the divorce papers, the silence in my house was deafening and beautiful. No more heavy footsteps. No more Diane's perfume lingering in the hallways. No more fake smiles. Just peace. I stood in my kitchen with a hot cup of coffee, watching the sunlight pour through the windows, and for the first time since my father's funeral, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was breathing again. But peace was short-lived, because 3 days later, Tom tried to fight back. I got a message from my lawyer. Tom had filed a response to the divorce petition and was demanding spousal support. According to his claim, I had accumulated wealth during the course of the marriage, and he had supported my emotional well-being, making him entitled to financial compensation for his contribution. My blood boiled. Supported my emotional well-being? The same man who tried to pressure me into giving half of my inheritance to his mother? The same man who barely lifted a finger when I was grieving? It was pathetic and desperate. Still, I didn't panic. I had prepared for this. We responded with every piece of evidence we had. His invasion of privacy, the attempted password hacking, his mother's uninvited visits, the recordings of him belittling my grief, and, perhaps most damning, the footage of Diane searching my office. My lawyer submitted everything. And that's when the calls started. Blocked numbers, random accounts, emails from names I didn't recognize. But I knew it was Tom, or Diane, or both. One voicemail said, Emma, you're ruining everything. This isn't how family treats each other. Call me back. Another message simply read, You'll regret this. But I didn't. I went to work. I saw friends. I started therapy. I walked my dog in the mornings, went to the gym, sat in cafes with a book. Simple things, but each moment felt like a small act of freedom. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual friends that Tom had moved back in with Diane, who, by the way, had just defaulted on one of her credit cards. Apparently, they were in talks with a shady financial advisor about flipping houses with no capital. Tom had also quit his job a week after my father's death, assuming he'd be living off my inheritance. Now he had no job, no house, no car, because the one he drove was registered under my father's company name, and I had it repossessed legally. Everything was unraveling. Then came the final blow. My lawyer informed me that the judge had reviewed the evidence and rejected Tom's spousal support claim entirely. Not only is he not getting a cent of your inheritance, my lawyer said, but the court also views his actions as manipulative and predatory. If he keeps pushing, we could pursue a restraining order. I smiled. Let's keep that in our back pocket. But I didn't need it. Because Tom started to break. He called me one night from a different number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Emma? He said, voice shaky. Please, just hear me out. I didn't say anything. I messed up. I see that now. I let my mom get in my head. I got greedy, but I miss you. I miss us. I waited for the punchline. You can't do this to me, he said finally, his voice rising. I gave you years of my life, and now you're leaving me with nothing? That was the moment I knew. Tom never loved me. He loved the idea of what I could give him. Status, security, access. And when he realized I wouldn't be controlled, he panicked. You gave me nothing, I replied calmly. And I owe you even less. I hung up. I blocked the number. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Clean. Efficient. My legal team had protected everything. My assets, my company shares, the apartment I had inherited from my dad. Tom walked away with what was legally his. A few $1,000s in savings and whatever dignity he hadn't already spent. Diane, predictably, tried to sue me for emotional distress. It was thrown out immediately. With the dust finally settling, I donated a portion of my inheritance to a cancer foundation in my father's name. It felt right. A full circle moment. Because the story wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about release. And now I was free. It's been 7 months since the divorce was finalized. 7 months since I walked out of that courthouse with a signed decree and a quiet smile that said, I'm done handing my peace to people who don't know how to value it. The house was still mine, but it didn't feel the same. Every room carried echoes of slammed doors, of Diane's sharp voice, of the man I once thought I'd grow old with. So I sold it. Not out of spite. Not even out of necessity. I just wanted to let go. My father's apartment downtown, the one he gifted me years ago but I never moved into, was waiting. I renovated it with warm colors, open windows, and soft spaces. It felt like a fresh chapter. It felt like mine. The first night I slept there, alone but safe, I lit a candle and sat by the window. I thought about my dad, about how proud he would have been. Not of the money, not of the legal battle, but of the fight I had in me. He always told me, Emma, power isn't in how loud you are. It's in how quietly you refuse to be used. And he was right. For a while after the divorce, I kept expecting some kind of twist. Like Tom would come back with another scheme, or Diane would send another letter through some third-rate lawyer. But nothing came. Just silence. Eventually, through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Tom had filed for bankruptcy. Diane was renting a basement apartment and had closed all her social media. Their little empire of entitlement had crumbled under its own weight. And me? I was rebuilding. Not from scratch, but from truth. I went back to work with new clarity. I used part of my inheritance to fund a scholarship in my father's name for first-generation medical students who wanted to serve underserved communities. My dad always believed in giving back, and now, even in death, he still could. I also started mentoring young women in business and leadership. So many had been through what I had. Financial abuse disguised as support, manipulation disguised as love. They didn't need saving. They just needed reminding that they had a choice. It's funny, really. I thought revenge would taste sweet. It didn't. What tasted sweet was waking up without anxiety, checking my phone without dread, sitting in silence and feeling peace instead of tension. What tasted sweet was the moment I looked in the mirror and saw myself again. Not the version Tom wanted to mold, not the version Diane tried to belittle, but the me my father raised. The me I had almost forgotten. One afternoon, I found an old letter tucked into one of my dad's books. It was in his handwriting, dated 3 years before his death. Emma, if you're reading this, it means I'm not around anymore. And I want you to remember something important. Money reveals people. It doesn't change them. It just makes what's already inside a little louder. Don't ever let someone make you feel guilty for having what they feel entitled to. Share when it's love. Protect when it's pressure. And if someone ever makes you choose between peace and pleasing them, choose peace. Every time. I sat with that letter for a long time. And I cried. Not out of pain, but out of relief. Because even in his absence, my father had given me exactly what I needed. A compass. A reminder that I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't wrong. that choosing myself wasn't selfish. Now, when people ask me about the divorce, I don't tell them about the money, or the manipulation, or even the betrayal. I tell them this. I learned that love without respect is just possession, and family without boundaries is just chaos. I didn't just survive my marriage. I outgrew it. And the greatest revenge I ever took was healing without needing them to see it. So here I am, still standing, still smiling, still soft, but no longer silent.